Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 7th District, that's the Central Virginia area, Dave Brat. Dr. Brat, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be with you, John. I goofed up and didn't go with your Astros. I'll never make that mistake again.
I told you to go with him, seeing that I won lots of stuff. I went to dinner for two from Kirk Cox. I got so many dinners that I've beaten these people for. Forget about going on a diet. It is not going to happen. But, yes, don't ever go against my Astros. This is their year finally. After all this time, finally, this has got to be it, right? So we're excited about it. All right, let's get to tax reform. Now that we passed the budget resolution, right, in the Senate, right, yay, we've got that done. Now it gets to the House. You got to pass it there, get the president to sign it. Then you can move forward with tax reform. The president and Mick Mulvaney saying they're confident they can get this done by Christmas. Yet, if it's the end of October, it isn't even in markup. How are we going to get this done by Christmas?
Well, I think the Ways and Means and the money committees have been working on. I mean, they've got umpteen sets of ways of getting this thing done, right? I mean, they're working on. They know where all the big political hurdles are. And so, you know, the Democrats, first of all, I just want to come in and say on the first, the Democrats' talking point is, 80% of the money goes to the top 1% or something. I mean, it's so blatantly false, and they never get called out for any of that. And the major reason is, and so people can go look it up, but we're giving money back to small business, and they're counting that as rich people. Well, I don't know many people in my district in small business that consider themselves rich. And that's the issue, right? And so I just want to clear that one up. And then as we go forward on the tax piece, the war coming up will be the plan that was presented to us versus the swamp up in D.C. And so what that means is every special interest now is going to come in and screaming and kicking and fighting to preserve their tax credits and deductions and special offsets and whatever. And if they get their way, then we won't have as much money to give tax cuts to the middle class and small business. And so that is the real contest to watch, right? If we start losing some of these big pieces, the state and local piece and all that, that's a sign that you're not going to get as big of a tax cut.
Right. So what you're saying basically is as soon as it begins to formulate, then the lobbyists are going to come out. They're going to be swamping the swamp, if you will, running around all the buildings of the Capitol with a lot of money in their bags. And they're going to want to preserve all of the golden cows they've carved out for the select few, for the elites, right? All the different things that benefit different people, winners and losers. They get the winners, they get the money. And then what you're saying is it's going to water down the whole prospect of getting any kind of a major tax cut because the money will keep coming out in order to be beholden to the special interest.
Right, and it's kind of capped. The House had a balanced deficit approach, and the Senate came out with about $1.5 trillion in deficits over 10 years that we hope to get back in a variety of ways. I can't go into detail on all of it in a short time, but that'll limit the amount of tax cuts that you can give, right? And so that's why this is so crucial. And so if you don't do reform and get rid of the deductions, those are part of the pay-for. So this is all technical, but the CBO and the scoring groups up in D.C. make you pay for tax cuts. That's how bizarre a world we live in right now, right? In order for me to give you your money back, I have to pay for it. We just doubled the debt in 10 years under Obama, right, from 10 to 20 trillion. And all of a sudden, when it comes to giving tax cuts, you got to, jump through so many hoops, it's not even funny. And so we have to pay for all of your tax cuts. And in order to do that, you got to take away some of the special interest perks and all the goodies from the swamp. And so that's always hard to do, but that's the challenge in order to get this country growing again. And that's the most important piece, right? The stock market's up. The real economy is actually growing right now.
Right.
And if we don't get this through, we're going to, go into less optimistic waters, to put it mildly.
All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes here, Dave Brat. House Budget Committee Chairman Diane Black of Tennessee, by the way, running for U.S. Senate, in case you don't know that, after Bob Corker retired because we would have beaten him in a primary. By the way, that's why he retired, because he'd have got his butt kicked. That's my narrative, Dave. You don't have to be involved in that. Anyway, Black told lawmakers on a call the other day that she supports passage of the Senate budget to get the tax reform moving faster. So what happens is the Senate passed a budget resolution. It now goes to the House. You got two choices. You can either pass that and it goes to the president's desk done, or you can change it, and then we got to go through the process of negotiation right between the Senate bill and the House bill. Do you favor either of those methods?
Yeah, I'm going to vote for the Senate piece. We're compromising on that. I don't like part of it. We saved $200 billion in mandatory reforms in the House budget process. We worked hard on that. We're going to lose that, and there's a couple other little losses. That's not little. But the answer is I'm going to vote yes, because you cannot keep the momentum from going forward, right? If we delay this by another few weeks and then that gets us after Christmas, the swamp has time to retrench and come after us. And without tax reform, everything else is halted, right? If you don't get tax reform and economic growth, then we'll never be able to pay off the debt and deficits going forward, right? That's the only prayer we have to bring down the debt for real. Everybody knows you're not going to cut spending, right? The Democrats just had a bill that increased taxes by $10 trillion. And you would think if you raise taxes by $10 trillion, you might pay off some of the debt. They had more debt and deficits than the Republican budget, even after they raised taxes by $10 trillion. And so, I mean, in the mainstream, you haven't heard a word of that from the mainstream media, right? I mean, it's just kind of astounding that it's always a fight against the Republicans who are trying to be the adults in the room. But that's the way it is. So we got to do the right thing and get this country on the right track.
So, Congressman, let's get to the disaster relief fund. Now we got another $36 billion for Puerto Rico. Obviously, they're in a world of hurt right now. They still can't get some basic supplies. How does this make it through the appropriations system so fast?
Well, up in D.C., there's never a problem spending money. I mean, to summarize it quickly. And it's tough, right? Because I got people coming up saying, aren't you funding Puerto Rico? And the answer is the same with Florida and Texas and everything. I was a yes vote on all the funding to help disaster relief, right? But then when you couple it with other must-pass stuff, this thing we wiped off $16 billion in debt just into thin air. And the American people are just used to that. What they don't realize is that goes straight to their bill, right? That goes on their tax bill to pay it. And that never gets explained. And then even worse than that, the flood insurance program, which this is all linked to, we had a Republican bill under Jeb Hensarling, which would have limited the number of houses we'll pay for flood relief to 5. So if you lose a house to a flood, we pay to rebuild your house. Lose a house to a flood, we pay for the second house. Lose it again, we pay for the third house. Lose it again, we pay for the fourth house, right? We're going to cap it at 5. And the swamp found that to be, I guess, cruel and inhumane treatment or something, which is just, you tell the average person that and they go, what? And we couldn't limit that in the bill at all. So it contains some terrible stuff. And then if we ended up funding, right? I mean, so we funded Puerto Rico, but unfortunately we paid for all that other stuff too, which is just incomprehensible to the average person when they hear this stuff.
So the original $36.5 billion, because they dumped everything in it, you were one of 69 congressmen that voted no, right?
Right.
But then Puerto Rico is saying we need this other $36.5 billion. So then, I mean, what do you do, right? Because the alternative is they don't get anything.
Yeah, well, that bill passed. Only 69 voted no, but everybody else voted yes. And without any reforms, with no fiscal discipline, without any rules, without any change to flood insurance. And that's the problem. And so we just continue to go bankrupt as a country because we just fund everything without ever changing the rules so that the future gets better.
So your no vote on this, Congressman Brat, was not because you opposed Puerto Rico or Texas or Florida getting the aid, the disaster relief. You were opposed to it because it just gave the money without looking at any of the reforms or anything else. And so it just becomes a perpetuation of giving money when you still have issues out there that nobody has apparently the courage to address. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's right. And it just look, I mean, there's always exceptions, right? But most
Right.
of the people who live on the ocean are doing pretty well, right? So, of course, there's pockets of poverty and poor, but you can means test that, right? So we're paying to rebuild $1 million homes out of your tax dollar, and that's in the bill. They get 5 homes rebuilt if they have hurricanes. And so, I mean, it really is just incomprehensible. There's some that are hard votes. That wasn't that hard of a vote. It was
Right.
unbelievable.
All right, got a couple more minutes. I want to get to the statewide elections, Dave, Brat, in Virginia. Ed Gillespie essentially tied now with Ralph Northam. Some polls have Northam ahead slightly, but based on historical polling in Virginia, you can't trust any of it. I've got this race in a dead heat. I think Jill Vogel will win. I think she'll defeat Justin Fairfax. And I think John Adams is behind, but he has a shot, but he's behind right now. How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, it's incredibly hard to call. I mean, you know my race, right? They had the best pollster in the country. McLaughlin had me down 30, and I won by 10. And so, and on the President Trump win, there was a silent majority that came through in the Midwestern states, just the quiet people that weren't polled. And so I still think there is a few point differential out there in the Republican favor for Ed and Jill and John. And I think they can come through. It'll be tough, right? In Northern Virginia, it'll be tough, and then they all got to make sure they get the base out and excite everybody, right? They got to go all in with everybody and just get the turnout to come out that day.
Congressman, how does Ed Gillespie get the Trump base vote out that he needs in order to win? He's not invited the president here. Obviously, they've never met, and there's 2 weeks to go. So you got that whole thing going on. He's kind of threading the needle with it. If you're Ed Gillespie right now, how do you get the Trump base vote out in order to put you over the top?
Yeah, well, you just say, look, I mean, the agendas couldn't be more different, right? The Trump agenda, Ed agrees with all of it, right? Tax cuts, repeal Obamacare, regulatory reform. He's got all 3 pieces of the Trump agenda in there, right? Versus Hillary Clinton back in the election, she wants to deconstruct everything that makes America great, right? She wants to deconstruct the Judeo-Christian tradition, the rule of law, and free markets. And then that's what the left is doing on a daily basis. And so, I mean, you just say, look, the Trump agenda is right here. And then he's even got a little bit on sanctuary cities and some of the MI-16 stuff and whatever. And people are concerned about that, right? Illegal immigration and some of those issues are just, 70, 80% issues. The American people want to see that resolved, and they want to see border security, et cetera. And so if he hits some of those angles, I think that's a homer.
All right, that's what he's got to do. Embrace some of the president's policies or get him here in the final days. I think for him to win, it's going to be very, very close. We want to thank Congressman Dave Brat for being with us. More information, you can go to davebrat.com, davebrat.com. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, John. Appreciate it.